One of 2019's biggest releases, Devil May Cry 5, released last week to phenomenal reviews. Currently on Metacritic, the Xbox One version sits at an average score of 87 out of 100, the PlayStation 4 version an 86 out of 100, and the PC version an 89 out of 100. On OpenCritic, based off of 125 total reviews, the average score sits at an 88 out of 100, with 90% of critics recommending this game. Pretty good. Following these glowing reviews, which likely will translate to strong sales numbers, Capcom's USA CEO Kichira Urata, I'm going to mispronounce a lot of things in this video, just an FYI, well, he boldly stated in a Twitter video that Capcom is back. Now, for the most part, there has been overwhelmingly positive coverage for this game, for good reason, but something strange was found recently with one of the versions of the game, specifically the PlayStation 4 version released everywhere except for Japan. What's been discovered is some very strange censorship of two scenes I guess you could consider not safe for work. So what specifically has been found is that within this scene, there's a huge J.J. Abrams-esque lens flare covering Lady's bum. As far as I understand, every version of this game has this annoying lens flare covering the very scary and harmful bum. Now, this is where things get a little bit more strange. In another scene, Dante is picking up Trish, who is naked, and only the Western PlayStation 4 version has this scene censored with a huge lens flare covering most of her body. Interestingly enough, it appears this specific scene being censored came after launch with the game's day one patch. So if you have purchased a physical version of this game on the PlayStation 4, you can avoid this lens flare by just not downloading the day one patch. If you purchase digital, you're likely out of luck, unfortunately. So I know some people are thinking, who cares about one or two scenes being censored in Devil May Cry 5, covering up some skin? Now, I have to say this issue is actually very complex, a little confusing, and something that has not received the attention it deserves until now. Because it appears this censorship is happening either because Capcom just for some random reason doesn't want to show any skin, or this is just another game being hit by the new policy set in stone at Sony that came to be in the later part of 2018. So what is this new policy? As reported by Game Revolution in November 2018, recently Sony instituted a new policy that began restricting the amount of risky content that developers can have in their games. This change came as a shock to many studios, as PlayStation systems had long been the console platform of choice for games that leaned into erotic territory without becoming a full-blown adults-only title revolving around, well, adult fun. But now that has changed, and it shows how willing Sony is to bend to societal pressures around adult fun and not violence. Now, I have to be careful with what I present on the screen because there's a good chance YouTube will demonetize and age restrict this video if I show too much or say certain words. So yes, I have to be careful of censorship, which is pretty ironic being the subject we're going over. But anyway, back in October 2018, an example of a game being affected by this policy was this mature visual novel that I sure as hell cannot pronounce, but as you can see in this screenshot, only the PlayStation 4 version has been censored with annoying lens flares. In December 2018, Sony Interactive Entertainment Japan president Atsushi Morita finally addressed the censorship regulations that Sony had employed for PlayStation 4 games. He would state, regarding the regulation of the depiction of content, it's simply a matter of matching global standards. As for the freedom of expression, we have to think about what might be unpleasant for children and shield them from those things, while also thinking and accessing ways to find a balance for that expression. Which, let me just say, what the heck is the point of rating boards like the ESRB? All of the games being censored are already being rated M or adults only, and I just don't understand this protect kids argument. Violence and brutal murder is fine in video games, but a set of bouncing blobs or schlong flopping around the screen is harmful? I don't understand it. Parents should be educated on this stuff, knowing what content their kids are consuming, and I just don't believe Sony, Nintendo, or Xbox, or even Steam should be in the business of doing a parent's job. Anyway, there is a strong belief that Sony's California headquarters is behind this policy, and for those unaware, it was only just a few years ago in 2016 when PlayStation's headquarters was moved to California with a newly created Sony Interactive Entertainment. But in a now deleted Twitter rant, former Blizzard producer Mark Kern in late January lashed out at Sony USA over these new censorship policies. He would state, "There is a new wave of puritanism hitting games. Sony USA is dictating what Sony Japan standards are for censorship censorship. The US has a long history of moral panics. We're caught in another one. It will swing back once again, but it's ridiculous now. I do find it disturbing that the US is imposing their current moral panic on other countries and cultures and foreign game developers. The US being world police on morality is what I call cultural oppression. Might as well go out and colonize again. From a business perspective, there is danger in giving into the panic. Like all panics, it's a form of mass hysteria. It's not real, and in fact, buyers don't care. Only the pundits and social media crowd. My advice to game companies: don't cave, you will lose customers. The ones actually buying your games don't care for censorship. Also, there is no untapped mass market out there that will magically buy more games if you somehow go woke enough. As Star Wars or Marvel Comics, it doesn't work. On the contrary, standing up and pushing back against censorship has boosted sales every time I've seen a game company do it, not just maintained but raised sales and visibility that they otherwise might not have had. So go for it, show that navel. Furthermore, as highlighted in this DualShockers article, there are more examples of Sony USA's headquarters dictating what content is allowed on PlayStation. In October 2018, Xseed Games and the team behind, I can't say that game, publicly made it known that the controversial intimacy mode was being stripped from the PlayStation 4 version of the game because they were respecting the wishes of the platform holder, being PlayStation. And additionally, in June 2018, publisher P-Cube revealed despite working with rating boards, they were forced to cancel Omega Labyrinth Z's Western release on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita because of Sony. As I stated earlier, this is a complex issue that really could get worse in the future, but for right now it appears to only be affecting Japanese game developers, which raises the question of if this may affect upcoming games like Death Stranding if it does feature mature content. And one thing to note, that is coming from Hideo Kojima and his Japanese studio Kojima Productions. Unfortunately, with this Devil May Cry 5 situation, both Sony and Capcom have not commented yet, and I'm honestly unsure if they will at all offer a public response to what's happening. Another recent game that featured similar adult content is Metro Exodus, and I would say it goes a lot farther than Devil May Cry 5 in terms of what's shown, but importantly, that game is developed by Ukrainian 4A Games, and it seems for at least now this policy has not affected Western developers, just Japanese. This makes me wonder if Sony is so concerned about cleaning their platform up and featuring more family-friendly content, is this new policy going to go more widespread in the future? You have games like Cyberpunk 2077, which already teased some mature elements within the 48-minute gameplay demo publicly released late last year. Will this or could this be affected in the future? There's just a lot of uncertainty of what's actually happening at Sony, and I think a lot of people wouldn't believe a massive game like Devil May Cry 5 could be affected by censorship, and right now it appears that's possibly what has happened. In November 2018, Push Square published an article on Catherine Fullbody being censored by Sony, something that the developer all but confirmed in a statement. There are no mysterious lights in Catherine Fullbody. We went as far as we could without the light shining. To everyone worried about that, we love you. And something that I found really interesting was this line of this article: this whole censorship thing has been rumbling on for around a month now, and at first it looked like Sony was only targeting relatively niche Japanese developers. However, more recently, it was confirmed by Koei Tecmo that Dead or Alive Extreme 3 Scarlet would have certain aspects removed on PlayStation 4. In other words, Sony may be widening the net. And now here in March 2019, a big release is featuring the infamous lens flares. I think the question just has to be asked, how far will this go? As I said in the beginning of this video, there are a few possibilities to what's happening with Devil May Cry 5. Capcom may have just chose to censor the female characters for their own artistic reasons, but for some reason, they have refused to comment on the story or situation so far, and there have been some rumors floating of them even blocking people for asking about this. Then there's the other possibility that Sony pressured Capcom into adding those lens flares because of their new policy. Like I said, this really is a confusing situation because there's no definitive answers coming from Sony at all on their new policy, and for some reason Capcom has not commented on this issue, at least yet. The problem facing gaming and really society as a whole is the push to censor or block things that could offend someone, and unfortunately really anything can trigger some sensitive individuals like little 9-year-old Kevin's mom, who chooses to get angry at game developers for making rated M games that specify in the game cover what content is included, and Kevin's mom still manages to get angry because Kevin witnessed some bouncing blobs, which clearly are over the line but not the violence and murder happening in said game. It's ridiculous, and I wonder how Sony uses their policy in the future. Based on that one comment coming from a Sony president about protecting kids, what will they say to a massive developer like Rockstar Games with Grand Theft Auto 6, which may include some working girls, or even CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk 2077, which may feature even more mature content? Will Sony have the same guidelines with Western developers in the future? I really hope not, but time will tell. Just a very odd situation. On face value, I know some people will be like, who cares about a lens-flared bum? But this issue goes much deeper, with many small Japanese mature games as of late being heavily affected, with Sony behind the scenes dictating how these games appear on their platform. Is that what's happening right now to Capcom? Possibly. Anyway, there's already various countries who are very strict about what games can and can't include, which is why games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and South Park: The Stick of Truth have been altered in certain territories. But what do you make of Sony's somewhat secretive new policy, which is here to protect the children? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I don't always get into video form, so make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games, and again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.